Check. Hey, and welcome. This is going to be my tutorial for an introduction to compression. And we're going to be listening to a song called No Karma. Yeah. So let's check out the chorus to kind of give us an idea of what we'll be listening to. And then we're going to break down compression, what it is, what it does. Chorus. Cut. Okay, cool. That's the chorus. So let's talk about compression, what it is, why we might use it. We just listened to the chorus. These are the vocals. Let's listen to, I'm going to take off the effects, take off all the, that's a cool, handy little shortcut in Pro Tools. Shift A, whatever I have selected, Shift A is going to turn off all the inserts. That's pretty cool. Let's grab this harm as well. So if I hit Shift A, they all turn back on, Shift A again, and they are off. You know what? Because you guys deserve it, let's turn on Cursor Pro, and then we could zoom in. Woo! Cursor Pro. Let's just talk about compression. Compression in its most simple form is going to be controlling dynamic range. So what do I mean by that? I just mean it's going to control the loudest part and the quietest part. So there's going to be like a happy medium achieved. So in this song, I'm kind of really singing in the chorus. I might scream or sing some words much louder or loud enough that it would be distracting. Okay, so if I really lay into a word and it gets really loud in the recording, what that's going to make you want to do is turn down the track. You might want to turn down the track anyway. That's fine. But what we want to happen is to kind of have something that sounds pretty even. And the best way to do that is either kind of ride a fader. So you grab a fader, and this is what they used to do is just, I mean, folks still do it. This is just natural compression. It's just turning stuff down and up. So as you're singing and as you're doing a pass, you're just turning the volume up and turning it down as needed. Long and short, compression is going to even out your signal. Let's listen to this vocal, this one lead vocal. I have a double happening. Let's listen to this one lead vocal with no compression. And I'm going to turn off these effects. So no compression and no effects. So let's have a listen to what that sounds like. I got no karma. I heard some reverb, and it's because it's on my master bus. Well, I'll keep that on. That's the vocal, no compression. So let's open up this first compressor and see what it's doing. And then we're going to use another compressor. So this is the CLA 76. Let's talk about some buttons that you're going to find on most every compressor. You're going to have input. So that's the signal we're feeding into the compressor. And we're going to have output. Output is also on other compressors is going to be called makeup gain. We have attack. An attack is the amount of time it takes for the compressor to turn on. So a quicker attack, the compressor is going to turn on faster. And a slower attack, it's going to take a little bit more time before the compressor comes on. And if you think about that for a second, if you're trying to dull sounds up, a quicker attack is going to be better. Or if you're trying to make it sound like you don't want to hear the compressor, sometimes a quicker attack can be better there as well. If you're trying to maintain kind of like the fidelity of your transient, a slower attack will be better. Just think about like a kick drum. If you want the initial snap of the kick drum to come through, you would use a slower attack, and then the compressor would turn on, so you still have a snappy kick drum. But if you want to dull that kick drum a little bit, then you're going to want to compress with the attack a little bit faster. Now, it doesn't make sense. Hopefully it will by the end of the video. So attack time, amount of time it takes for the compressor to turn on. Release time, amount of time it takes for the compressor to turn off. Okay. On these on these particular plugins, they're modeling an older compressor, which was an 1176. And if you ask a lot of folks, it's kind of like they put the buttons on backwards. So the release time at 7 is all the way fast. Where on many compressors, this 7 would indicate milliseconds or seconds by the time it gets to there. and the 1 is going to be all the way quick on a lot of other compressors. So just kind of be mindful. And what you can do to figure this out one way or the other is hit go and watch this needle. So when it's at 7, you'll watch it recover very quickly. This gauge right here, this is telling us how much gain reduction or how much compression is happening. How much is my level being turned down? So let's have a look at that and see how the needle bounces with this quick release.
I got no karma.
Cool. So when I say karma, I really kind of laid into it. And you see it, there's a little bit more gain reduction happening. Let's bring this release and let's turn it all the way slow. And now watch the needle. The compressor really won't have any time to recover. It's just going to be on, compressing, and dulling the signal a little bit.
I got no karma. It's not nirvana.
The compressor never really fully recovers, and so we lose a lot of energy from the vocal. So on vocals, I like to have very quick releases on lead vocals. And then everything else, maybe not right away on the track, but eventually everything else is going to have a slightly slower release. So my vocals pop out front and my other instruments sit slightly behind. This is actually a great way to get some depth in your mix, is just by messing with the release times and the attack times. It's really quite something. So if you use EQ a lot, perhaps now for placing stuff in front of the mix and then behind, but another way to do that pretty effectively is to use compression. So some words are louder and some words are quieter. Let's listen again and just kind of take your time and listen. This is the compressor off, okay? So listen to how some words are slightly louder and other words are slightly quieter. So I've got no karma.
I got no karma.
Especially the no karma. So I've got pretty equal, no karma, pretty quiet.
I got no karma.
And here comes with compression.
I got no karma.
So that's the beauty of compression. You notice now with the compressor on, it evens the no karma out. So it's just kind of the natural way. Like when I sang that line, I probably ran out of breath a little bit on no karma. So naturally, I'm not going to have as much power singing those lines. So with a little bit of compression and with some gain reduction happening, like I think we went up to, I wasn't like between -7 and -10 dB gain reduction. With that compression happening, it really helps level out my overall signal. Now, I will say, like, one thing I'll do quite often is I'll have one compression setting for verses if they're quieter, and then a different compression setting for choruses if they're a little bit louder with a little bit more energy, because the gain reduction and the compression is not always going to match up. I kind of match the compressors for the amount of energy in each section. So I'm like, okay, this is a whispered quiet part. Well, this is going to be mixed a little bit differently than a yelling part. I'm just going to put in the regular, just the stock Pro Tools compressor. Now it looks like this. Now I mentioned on the CLA 76, I'm going to keep it bypass bit open. On the CLA 76, we had input, okay? And the input actually triggers this threshold. So the input, I'm already feeding it, and there's no input dial. So this is the threshold. So this would be like a 2-in-1 deal on this 1176. As you bump the input, it's going to start feeding the compressor. And here, I'll have my input is my input on this one, and I'll bring back the threshold. They're like connected. Okay, so on this one knob in this 1176, this was like a 2-for-1. This one is a little bit different. So I need to bring back my threshold until I start seeing some gain reduction. So this GR right here, that stands for gain reduction. And this is when I start seeing like -6 dB of gain reduction, I'll stop. I'm going to go all the way fast. Remember I said this about the 1176. This was all the way fast. Well, 5 milliseconds is all the way fast, and 4 seconds is all the way slow. Okay, so, and I'm going to start with like a medium-ish attack. So if I started with that threshold off, I'm going to dial it back until I start getting gain reduction.
No karma. It's not.
Now, all that I've done here is I've just turned everything down. So all that's happening right now is compression. So if I bypass this, my original signal is probably going to be, well, not probably, it is going to be louder. So what I want is more even. So I need to bypass and use this makeup gain to match. It'll be matched, but it will be more even overall. So here it is off.
I got no karma.
And on.
I got.
So it's a little bit quieter. So I'm going to bring up this makeup gain.
I got no karma. It's not.
So now we have, again, we got a compressor doing some work for us. It's compressing. We have a quick release, and see my node, we have about 6 dB of gain reduction or so on the loudest part. So that's what we have for our settings. Now, what happens if we get too much gain reduction? What's going to happen is distortion. So we can really bring back the threshold and start to get massive amounts.
No karma. It's not nirvana. Nomadic.
So you hear how the words kind of get a little bit gurbled would be the best word for it. Distorted is another word for it. It starts to ruin the clarity or mess with the clarity of the vocal. This can actually sound great depending on what effect you're going for. If you need distorted, aggressive vocals, you don't need it to be super clear, this is a great tactic. If you want some edge to your vocals, you could do something like this in parallel. I got another video on parallel compression that kind of walks through that, and you can maintain clarity on one vocal and bring in edge on another vocal in parallel. And we haven't touched on ratio. So both of these plugins have ratios. So this is a 3-to-1 ratio, and this is 4-to-1. We have different options on the CLA 76. We have a 4-to-1, 8-to-1, 12-to-1, 20-to-1, and this really cool all buttons in, which is super aggressive. And there's a cool little history behind all buttons in compression. If you want to Google that, it's pretty neat. It's a great happy mistake. And now we have it in a plugin. The ratio here on the Pro Tools stock goes up to like 100-to-1. So it's like a brick wall. And that gets very aggressive. And if we did that here, it would probably just totally distort. And you hear it pumping.
It's not nirvana.
Okay, so that's how crazy that can get. That's ratio, and that definitely plays into how aggressive your compression is. Typical, like where I start on a vocal is typically like a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 kind of ratio. So every 3 dB I go over the threshold, 1 dB comes out the other side. That's probably it doesn't get more complicated than that. I mean, it does if you think about it. It keeps you up at night. But all right, that is compression, a simple introduction to compression. And I hope you liked that video, and we'll catch you in the next one.